So we're talking about practical DMARC strategies, and this is from the perspective of a managed service provider or perhaps an IT director managing an environment. And Andy is a fairly new SendMark partner. We got a chance to catch up in Nashville at ChannelCon, and I just loved your opinion, your approach, and kind of your journey. And you can really sport a cowboy hat much better than I can. So well done on that. I didn't get to
Thanks, Ed.
take one home. I think I lost mine, but yeah, a lot of fun. And so, when I reached out to you, I was like, let's do a little, webinar to just kind of share the journey, share the knowledge, because DMARC tends to be that technology that really caught a lot of people off guard with Microsoft announcing it, some acquisitions in this space, and so it's kind of been in the forefront. Um, and so that's what we're doing today. Anything to add to that, Andy?
Yeah, to me, DMARC is one of those things that unfortunately the big email players have not done a good job at putting forward. Um, Google and Yahoo last year made it mandatory if you were sending or receiving email over a certain volume. Microsoft made that mandatory this year, and yet still, um, both Microsoft and Google don't require it when you first set up a tenant. So as a brand new tenant, it'll say, here's what your SPF record should be, but they don't say anything more. And so DMARC is one of those things that isn't put forward, but we'll talk about how important that is.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point. DMARC is, well, the solutions for DMARC, most all of them are built for enterprise, meaning
Yeah,
enterprise budgets. So that leaves the small to medium-sized businesses hanging, as well as MSPs that need something that will scale and not break the bank. Um,
exactly.
yeah. So would it make sense to kind of have the real quick, what is DMARC conversation, just to make sure everyone's on the same page as far as what this email security protocol is exactly?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it depends on who I'm talking to. If
Mhm.
I'm talking to an IT director, they may have some idea what DMARC is, and so we'll get into some of the technicals. But oftentimes I'm talking with C-suites and with, business owners, and it's a little bit difficult to explain what DMARC is. But what we end up saying is that there's some security measures that are missing on their domain. Sometimes we'll mention what it is if they ask, but usually we'll just say there's security measures that are missing. And without those security measures, a couple of things can happen. The big thing that everybody really finds important is the deliverability side. So that's super important where if they're sending out marketing email, if they're sending out invoices, they want to make sure that those land in the inbox of who they send it to. And so usually the conversation we talk about the importance, the basically the operational side and how you definitely want that deliverability. Counteracting that is the security side. And so then we'll mention about, as it sits right now, anybody can spoof your domain or pretend to be you because you don't have that security in place. So obviously that's a bad thing because people can send email as if they're one of your employees, to your vendors, to your clients. So that's obviously a really bad thing. And usually I won't get into too much of the details on that, but I will ask them, do you ever receive emails from other people in your organization? And they say, I didn't send that. And most of the time they'll say, yes, oh yeah, that happens all the time. If there are other people in the room, they'll say, "Oh yeah, I get some from our CEO all the time asking me to buy gift cards or whatever it happens to be." So then again, I circle it back and I say that's because you're missing that security feature that's called DMARC, and so that's why it's so important.
Yeah, well done. You hit on all the points. Like if I was doing an elevator, pitch to a C level, I usually start with email is broken out of the box, and so you need a
Yeah,
layered security strategy to fix it. And while the inbound's always the first thing that people, get a solution for, what about messages sent outbound? And so DMARC
yeah,
gives the visibility of who's using your domain. it improves the delivery of your valid mail, and then of course blocks those bad guys. And how do you block
Yeah.
bad guys? Which is why the P equals reject. So policy of reject is the
Yeah.
ultimate policy you want to reach on your domain, and you set that in DNS, or Andy sets that for you on your domain. So very, very important.
And I've had some like ask me to explain it to them like they're a 5-year-old, where
Mhm.
they're like, like I really, really want to understand how this works. Like, what do you mean by we're missing some security there? And so, a long time ago, I went on to, I forget which LLM I used, if it was Claude or ChatGPT or one of them. And I said, explain DMARC to me like I'm a 5-year-old. And so I have had a few people ask about it. And what I end up saying is, imagine that you were back in school and you wanted to pass a note over to your best friend, but it has to go through your teacher. And so you could have somebody else in the room say, I'm your best friend, and they send it to the teacher and it arrives to you, and you're like, wow, look what my best friend just said. But if you've got something in place where you put a particular sticker on that note and you send it through the teacher, and the teacher recognizes, hey, it says it's from Johnny and it has Johnny's sticker on it, then it'll get passed over to that person. And so that's kind of the way that DMARC works, is that
Yep.
for those that are technical in the audience, you have to have your SPF record correct, has to say, I'm coming from this server, and then it has to have DKIM correct, where the signature, that sticker is on there. And then DMARC is what has teeth. It'll say, here's what to do with emails that don't match one of those two things. So if it doesn't match one of those two items, you can say, and this is why it's so important what you just showed there, the policy equals reject. So that means that when that mail server receives that email, it says, whoa, it doesn't match these. So I'm going to reject that email. One of the other key features is that you can say quarantine that email, but that still means that the mail server receives it and then they just put it in quarantine. And that's not really good enough. You want to reject that email so that it goes back to the server that sent it and it says, nope, sorry, we're not going to accept that email. It's fraudulent.
Yeah, I usually look at quarantine as a step toward reject. It's a good
You
place
bet.
to be. It's a
Yep,
little bit of protection, but might as well get all the way to reject.
you got it.
So, with all that said, any domain owner, I would imagine, would not be able to argue that having DMARC in place, is not an incredibly great protection. And I think that's really what's brought us full circle to our earlier statements, where Microsoft, Google's, if you have a G Suite environment, they're now requiring it. They're saying
Yeah.
this is needed. I think the FBI and the NSA last year had a joint memo that said we see attacks from countries overseas, and DMARC is what you need to put in place on your domain for visibility and protection. So it's really interesting to see that evolve and the awareness increase.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Andy, do you then tell us you're rolling this out to your customers with all care, and the customer generally wouldn't be putting this in place. You get this in place for them, DMARC?
Correct. Yeah, because we're handling everything to do with their domain. So we're
Mhm.
handling their email, we're handling their domain. Oftentimes we're handling their website. Sometimes they've got a web developer that's handling the website, but we're trying to handle all components of their IT, including the security. And this, to me, is a real key feature, a real need in security. And oftentimes when I'm talking to other MSPs, they don't really know what DMARC is or what it does. Um, Oftentimes, when you take a look at their domain, they're not doing DMARC, and so they're not able to tell their clients you should be doing this when they haven't actually, put on that air mask themselves. So, the first key is to put it into P equals none, to have a DMARC receiver like SendMark, so that you're able to see some of the visibility of what's actually the servers that you're using. And sometimes there'll be servers in there that you didn't even know that you had. You put in let's say a DKIM record for MailChimp, and you didn't really know that you're using MailChimp. Well, it'll tell you, hey, these are the servers that are sending email on your behalf. So oftentimes that's why people put in P equals none, is just for that initial time of reporting. But then they forget about it and they leave it as P equals none, which is completely ineffective. You can still send spam spoofing emails as them.
Yeah, the reality is if you're not watching it, then you're not aware.
Yeah,
So that's where the
exactly.
first step of DMARC is let's turn this on. Let's see if indeed I have a problem with valid senders or phishing. Now, Andy, you actually put a little widget on your website that
I
allows
did.
anyone to just type in their domain. Can you pull that up just to kind of share how simple it really is to see if your domain has a DMARC on it, if it's present, what stage it's in? Sorry to put you on the
Sure.
spot there, but I think it's a
Yeah,
great
sorry, I
segue.
forgot. I forgot about that. So
Do
here, yeah, let me share my screen and I'll show you what that
you need
is.
to know the website?
Okay, there.
There we go.
Yeah,
Healthcare
perfect.
IT.
Yeah, so we just have it right here at the top, free domain checker. So if somebody clicks on that, they can, there's a little explanation here of why domain security is important. We do talk about DMARC in here. We talk to them about implementing DMARC, but generally somebody's just going to come up here and put in their email address. So in this case, I'll put in mine. They can check off here whether they want to be contacted or not. And then they can scan the domain and it'll come back and it'll tell them what their score is. So in this case, my score is 95. Anything over an 80 is a passing grade. So the more that you can do on there, the better. And so as it sits right now, somebody can't spoof our domain. But if they put in a domain that does have that ability to be spoofed, then of course they're going to get a low grade. Anything under that 80 can be spoofed.
I see. Very cool. Well, I think the key here is that while we can go here and it's that simple to look up if you have it in place, that means the bad guys can too, right? So
Yeah,
they're going to go after the low-hanging fruit.
exactly. And so that tool that's on our website, you guys have graciously given that to us to use. It's the same as coming here to tools.sendmark.com and doing the same thing. Um, So anybody can go to either of those spots, and maybe this is something you were going to show after, Rob. Maybe I'm stealing your thunder,
No,
but
you're good.
it'll do the same thing where it'll give you that green that you're having a passing grade. If you want more details on what that includes, down here we'll show you what that is. And the tool is fantastic. It'll even show you things like how many lookups you have on SPF, because SPF has a limit of 10 DNS lookups. And oftentimes you don't control how many of those lookups you have. You might be pointing to Microsoft and Mailchimp and a few others, and if they add new ones in there, then all of a sudden you could be over the 10. And if as soon as you're over 10, then SPF fails, and so then the whole thing comes to a grinding halt again. So amazing that you guys have put this tool together for us. So thank you very much.
Thanks. The tool is really handy. As you showed, it's a very high level, and if you choose the drop down, then there's more information, and then even a downloadable PDF at the bottom. So, kind of switching gears, you've indicated you've deployed this to your customers. That's great, and we'd love to see all those domains protected because it really does
Yeah.
make the email world, the internet, a safer place. What would your advice be to perhaps I'm an IT director, maybe one of only one IT staff in an organization that's 50, 100, 150 people, and I might feel like I'm in over my head. What's some advice that you could offer there?
Yeah, do some research on how DMARC works and what you need to do there, because there is a specific format of how you put that record together. SendMark is fantastic at saying here's what it needs to be, and so you can just grab that record and publish it. Or what's even easier is SendMark has it so that you can just from your DNS point to them and they'll automatically create it. So again, really, really fantastic. We've been doing DMARC for many years now. I think it's been about 5 years that we've been doing it. So doing it way before it was cool. But we used a different tool than SendMark back in the day. And a couple of years ago, I went on a real good search because I wasn't happy with the tool that we were looking at. And so I tried every single DMARC tool out there, really narrowed it down, had a whole spreadsheet on, pros and cons of every tool, and SendMark ended up being my favorite. So there's some out there that aren't that great. There are some that are inexpensive and free. But then you have to do a lot more work on that. SendMark's way of doing it is super fantastic. Gives you a lot of health reports. It gives you what's going on with the DMARC. Sometimes what we'll end up seeing is somebody does have DMARC in place, but the email address that it's sending to might be their email address or an info at their own domain. And the the emails that come in, the reporting, the R inside of DMARC, is the reporting. So servers that think, that see email flowing through them will send those reports to you. And so they're not human readable. They're JSON files. And so you don't want to receive those because what do you do with them? You've got to try and decipher what it's saying. So have it go to something like SendMark so that it's able to then say, here's all the emails that the email servers that are receiving email on your behalf. Here's the amount of email that's being sent out, and here's the ones that are fraudulent, or perhaps you've forgotten about it. So sometimes, like you were saying, if it's an organization where they only have one IT person and there's 150 people, oftentimes there's whole different departments doing things. And so you may have a marketing department that says, you know what, we need to set up MailChimp and send out emails to our clients. And then they're getting very little value out of MailChimp. And it's because they haven't told the IT person, and IT may have something set up already that blocks MailChimp. So if you've got SendMark, you'll be able to see, whoa, MailChimp is being blocked. We need to add that to our SPF record, or we need to add a DKIM record in place. So you need to have that visibility, that reporting. Super, super important.
Yeah, I think I'd key in on that visibility statement. That's a good segue to the fact that the free trial exists. All you have to do is enter an email address, and then we provide the DNS change, the configuration. So whether you're a managed service provider or whether you're an IT manager, as long as you can make that change, remember, you're not altering email flow. You're not altering who you use to send email on your behalf. You're just
Correct.
putting eyes finally on seeing something that you've never really laid eyes on before. So that really simplifies that first step of, okay, I have a partner to help me just kind of see things. So that 3 weeks of just collecting data and presenting it is really a way for you to then formulate a strategy. Now that you have eyes on things, then you can consider what's the next step. We've even had, I find it really exciting when someone signs up for a trial, they realize they need help. Maybe they're 20 employees, 30 employees, and we, because of the way our system's built, we put them in touch with an MSP, and then we actually move their trial under that managed service provider so they have eyes on it and
Amazing.
they can see and
Yeah.
help them. Yeah, really, really neat.
Yeah. That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, thank you. On that note, that was kind of one of my next questions for you is, what is your strategy? Are you getting like every customer, every domain to a policy of reject? Are some harder than others? Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so the ones that we manage, 100%, everybody has to have it no matter what. And we
Oh,
even go so far as to do it on all of the parked domains. So if a domain is just one that isn't a sending domain, it doesn't have an MX record in place, it's not sending out emails. However, it can still be used for fraud. And so it might be a domain that, they have a .ai and a .com, and the .ai just points over to the .com. They're not using the .ai for email at all. However, if the bad guys see that there's no DMARC record in place there, they can send email through the .ai. And so from a brand reputation standpoint, a company can still suffer some brand reputation, even though they're not using that domain for email. So we have a policy internally that every single domain under our control has DMARC on it. Now, what ends
Right.
up happening is because they're not sending email, we set a blank SPF record and a blank DKIM, and then also the DMARC ends up being a blank one, but it's still set to reject. And that way, every single domain is protected. None of our clients can have that spoofing happening. Now, it doesn't prevent somebody from creating a new domain out there, setting up a doppelganger where they add an S in the middle of the domain. That can certainly happen. One of the things that we've noticed that is crazy is that when companies get a doppelganger email sent to them, oftentimes the attackers are setting up higher security than the original company had. so, so the original company may not have a DMARC record in place. The bad guys set up a another lookalike domain, and they set up SPF, DKIM, and DMARC on it. And that's because they want the deliverability. They want to make sure that when they send out emails, they land in the inbox and that there's nothing that stops that from happening. So crazy that the bad guys are looking at cybersecurity and what needs to be done a lot more so than IT directors and IT personnel are doing. And so you really need to look at where things are going and make sure that all things are buttoned up as much as we can.
Wow. I didn't realize that you were seeing them set up SPF and DKIM. I guess if they want to appear legit, that's what they have to
You
do.
got it. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had several times where we've done business email compromises for companies. That's how we get brought in. And we'll end up finding we get to the root cause of it, and whatever the name of the company happens to be. So let's say 123cleaning.com. Um, they might put an S at the end of it, or they might put one of the letters. If it's an L, they might change it to an I. And so they'll set up a doppelganger, a lookalike domain. But again, they put all of the email protection in place, and that's so that they make sure of deliverability on that email from the bad domain. And so again, the bad guys are setting up more security than the previous domain. So that's why we took a stance a couple of years ago, actually, on making DMARC a policy that is across the board for all clients. We so much so that we had I think I explained this to you before. We set up a cron job that would run on our server that would look at all domains inside of our Cloudflare. And if
Mhm.
the domain was missing an MX record, it would look to see does it have a DKIM, DMARC, and SPF record, and if not, then it would create one. And so every day, if we added new domains, new park domains, it would add those records automatically for us. So we really wanted to take that stance of being security focused.
Okay. I love that approach where, hey, it's required. If you want to be protected, I'm better off, you're better off. And I like that approach. Um,
Yeah, well, clients clients trust us to give them the
mhm.
information that they need. So if we don't bring it up to them, they're not going to know how to make that choice. And for something like DMARC, it can't be a choice. It has to be on. But what we do is we tell them, you're currently missing this. When we're onboarding you, we are going to put this in place for you. We're going to watch it for a couple of weeks just to make sure, because the things that we often see as spoofed is the companies are spoofing themselves. Previously somebody set up, let's say, a photocopier, and the photocopier is set up incorrectly, and it's actually spoofing the domain. And so when it's sending out emails to go back to the person themselves, they're spoofing their domain. They're doing it incorrectly. And so we'll see those things coming through or from their website. That's the second part. Whoever set up their website, they're using like a PHP mailer, and they're technically spoofing the domain because it's not in the DKIM and it's not in the SPF. And so they're spoofing their own domain. And so if we lock it down right away to reject, those two things will stop working. So normally we'll set it to P equals none temporarily until we watch what's going on. And then we'll lock it down after we make sure that those things are in place. But on a brand new tenant, say we're setting up somebody in Google or in Microsoft, on a brand new tenant, we lock it down right away because we know this is the only place it's being used right now because it's a brand new domain. So let's start from a reject point of view.
Ah,
Let's start with the lockdown and say Microsoft is the only thing allowed to send, and we start from a really good position.
zero trust security.
You
Start
got
with
it.
that, right, on the
You
sending.
got it. Yeah.
Great. Well, I want to encourage anyone to ask any questions because Ryan's manning the chat session. I really getting close to wrapping up here. I had one last question, and I guess it's kind of a two-part question. I'm looking for some validation. When we engage with MSPs, because we do talk to quite a bit of them, I think they struggle a little bit on needing to deliver the DMARC story to every customer. And what we usually say is kind of look at this as a 90-10 rule because your 10 employee law firm, that size organization really doesn't want this long conversation about DMARC. They're just like, I trust you, tell me what I need to
You
put
got it.
in place. So is a 90-10 rule kind of accurate when it comes to just getting this rolled out and getting them protected, with 10 being the
Yeah, for
harder
sure.
ones?
Yeah, yeah, and you know, I've learned a lot over the years. I used to talk about it from the security perspective first, and so I would say, "Woo, from a security perspective, this is really bad. You know, you want to combat spoofing." It ends up turning out to a lot of C-suite or to owners as want, want, want. You know, the teacher and the Charlie Brown things. They're like, I don't care about that. What I always do now is I talk about it from the operational side of things. I'll say, do you ever get some of the companies you deal with saying that they don't receive your emails? That, you know, when you send out marketing to them or when you send out invoices, they don't get them. And when, you know, you talk to them, they check their junk and they're like, oh, there it is in junk. And they say, yeah, that happens all the time. So then I talk about the reason why that you're missing this key feature in your security. And once we turn that on, that then validates your email to say this came from this person. And so then that deliverability goes up and your emails will land in their mailbox. That's massively important to C-suite. They want to make sure operationally that everything is just working the way that it should be. Um, Sometimes they want a little bit more information, and that's when I'll say the added bonus to this is that, you know, it'll combat spoofing. Somebody can't spoof your domain and pretend to be you with these things in place. That generally doesn't resonate near as much as the deliverability side. That really is something that they want to make sure. They want to ensure that when they send their emails, they land in an inbox because they want, you know, they need something back from that. They're either, you know, they've paid somebody to do a bunch of great marketing for them. They want it to land in the mailbox, or they're sending out an invoice, or they're sending out some other email. They want to make sure that lands there.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because sometimes the deliverability resonates more with a
Oh
small
yeah.
organization that just needs email to land in the inbox. So that's fair. Well, we pretty much targeted 30 minutes. I think this has been a great conversation. I would encourage anyone, whether it's watching a recording of this or an attendee now, if you want to learn more, Andy at All Care IT or Rob at Senmark.com. The tools that Andy mentioned, that's one of dozens upon dozens of tools and kind of communication that we help MSPs when it comes to, a go-to-market of DMARC and their strategy and their cybersecurity offering. So glad to help. Andy, any closing thoughts?
I would highly, highly, highly encourage everybody that's an attendee to check your own domain. I
Mhm.
checked some of the domains of ones that signed up, and about half the audience does not have a DMARC record in place themselves or a proper DMARC. So about half the audience can be spoofed. And so highly recommend that you go to tools.senmark.com, you check your domain. If you're below an 80, there's something that can be done to improve your posture. And so just click the little button down below that will expand it and find out what that is to get you to at least an 80. And if you're not the person to set that in place and you need to talk to your IT person or your cybersecurity person, definitely do that. You want to make sure that deliverability is there. You want to protect your brand reputation, and then you want to stop that spoofing side of things.
That's right. And you want to get to P equals reject, right?
You got it. P equals reject. Love that
That's
shirt.
awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, if you want a shirt or if you want to chat about DMARC, you know where to reach us. Thanks a lot, everyone, for attending, and looking forward to the next one. Thanks, Andy, so much.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. Take care, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.